WOVU-LP, Cleveland. Welcome to another edition of Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest this morning is artist R.A. Washington. Brother Washington, how are you today?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Okay, glad to have you. And, I usually start my interviews off with transparency, and I've known you for quite some time. It's probably been, over 20, 25 years. I'm just reflecting on things that we used to do down at Robin's Nest, down on St. Clair, and, the Cleveland Museum of Art and all of that. So I know you as a poet, but I also know you as a writer, and I know you as a musician as well. So I'll start off with your pedigree. Are you a native Clevelander? Have you been here all of your life? What has your life looked like with respect to Cleveland?
I'm from El Paso, Texas, but my parents are from Cleveland, and I moved back to Cleveland my sophomore year of high school.
Okay, so you spent some time away from Cleveland and then you returned. What was life like in Texas?
I grew up on Fort Bliss, which is a military base in El Paso, Texas, directly across a bridge from Juarez, Mexico. So it was, it had like a sterile environment, like, very military, very basic, patriotic side to it. Then it also had like a very chaotic Texas/Mexican vibe. Heavy in the gang violence side of things, and heavy in the GI violence side of things. So it was an interesting place to grow up. You met people from everywhere, and my stepfather was in the Army, and so I went to military school and participated as GI kids are supposed to, and it's very interesting. Let me just say that.
Yeah, interesting. I have a similar background in that my father was in the Air Force for 22 years, so I had a taste of that military life, but I can't say that I actually was in a situation like yours with respect to Texas and all of the things that you were exposed to. But I definitely have a feel for what it's like to be on a military installation and to deal with some of the issues that are with that. How did that experience affect you as a writer and in your life here in Cleveland?
That's a good question. I think primarily it made me someone who could pick up language and the way people talked, and like I was very interested in like the ways in which people would express themselves lexiconically, and how they would try to either cover up a class difference or purport a higher class. The different ways, like the subtext of how people would dish you. Since it was like, people from all over the country coming to El Paso, you kind of got a vibe of the different parts of the country's culture based on where people were from. So I had friends that were from Los Angeles. I had friends that were from New York. I had friends that were from Boston, or I had friends from Michigan. And they all brought some kind of the flavor of their lives in those cities back to Fort Bliss. So you got exposed to a lot of the different music And, you know, during the 80s, people were just passing around mixtapes and stuff like that. And so, you know, you could hear a lot of stuff that was not in the region. And so you can kind of like cobble together a more international worldview than if you had just been from El Paso. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and interestingly enough, too, you had that exposure to cultural diversity, whereas many of our counterparts here in Cleveland who grew up in black neighborhoods and, you know, were just primarily exposed to black folks never really had that. So it enabled you to have a much wider view or much wider spectrum of humanity, and I think somehow that has affected you artistically.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. So, when did you get it in your head that you're an artist?
I think around like 12 or 13. My mother, for Christmas, gave me a Smith Corona electric typewriter with the selector type so that you could delete. And she gave it to me, and then she gave me $50, and she took me to Juarez to the flea market and said, "Hey, here's your $50. You can get whatever you want out of the flea market." And I remember buying a dictaphone at the flea market for $12, and I had this like walkie-talkie set that I got there as well. So I was already like, unbeknownst to me, kind of like setting my path with those items. And so I remember like writing little scripts and, you know, having my brother and sister like play characters, and we would do it over the walkie-talkie. I remember like writing little stories and then practicing saying them out loud. I grew up in the church too, so we went to this church called Unity Missionary Baptist Church, and it was there that I was doing, came like a child preacher there. So around 13, 14, I started preaching and became an ordained minister. So I would write my sermons on my typewriter and then practice saying them in my dictaphone.
Wow. Interesting. I would have never pictured you as a minister, Brother Washington. So
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, that's go ahead.
My stepfather lied to the pastor and told him that I was called to preach in an effort to get himself a deaconship, which worked. And eventually I got pretty well known for it, and he actually resigned his commission to, quote unquote, manage my career. And I would go to revival tents and preach for money all over the South.
Wow. So when did that script flip?
He liked, I think he liked cocaine, and got himself into a little bit of trouble. And my mom, being a wise black lady, decided that she's going to take us all out of there. So I remember we left in the middle of the night and on Greyhound, and she had made some fried chicken, and I was responsible for the Tupperware of the fried chicken, but I left it in the bathroom in Arkansas on the way up. You know, that was a bad move. But yeah, she just got us out of there, came to stay with her sisters. And one of her sisters, my aunt Diane, lived in Cleveland Heights, and that's where I ended up going to high school.
Okay. So you landed in Cleveland, Ohio, specifically Cleveland Heights, and then you obviously you went to high school there. While you were there, I can imagine that some of the groundwork or the foundation for your life as an artist was formed. The Smith Corona typewriter, very important thing to have. I just remember back in the day, my choice was the IBM Selectric, and it had the correction tape on it that was built into it so you could type over your mistakes.
Right.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. And then came the word processor, and then the internet and computers, and the game changed. And so along the way, all these changes that took place in the publishing world, you got involved in writing books and publishing books, correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't say. Yeah, I kind of stumbled into that. Daniel Thompson, who was rest in power to Daniel Thompson, but he was a well-known Cleveland poet. He was a poet laureate for Cuyahoga County for a long time. One day I was skipping school and I was out front of Max Backs, and I didn't go in there. I was just standing out there, and he came past, and he kind of looked like a homeless Santa Claus. So I said something about it, and he ranked on me back, and that began like a bit of a friendship that blossomed into a brotherhood. And he published my first book of poems. He actually said to me, "You're like, what do you do?" And I was like, "I'm a poet." And he was like, "Oh yeah?" He's like, "Well, bring me 30 of your best poems and we'll make a book." And I did, and that's how it happened. And then that kind of like spiraled into meeting Black Poetic Society and Sage the Wise Cat and Daniel Gray Contar and the boogeyman Anthony Rucker, who was a counselor at Ohio Boys Town, where I spent a little bit of time. Me and my brother Gort, we spent a little time there. So they were doing performance poetry, and so I kind of got involved with that, and just kept on going from there.
Okay.
But I always wanted to make books. I didn't want to just write poetry. I wanted to write novels and plays and whatever. So once I saw the process, how people were doing it, I tried to come up with my own small presses, and I didn't really. My first tries at it were actually failures, where people paid me to print their books. I think you were one of them, and I didn't get it done. And so I realized quickly that I probably shouldn't be doing like book publishing. But over the years, I started doing more professional projects, and it kind of snowballed there. It kind of culminated with us doing Guide to Culture Press.
Okay. So you opened up a door there, speaking of open door, and you mentioned Black Poetic Society, and I definitely want to have a conversation about that. So we're going to continue the conversation on that and all things artistic with artist R.A. Washington right here on Open Door with Vince Robinson, 195.9 FM, WOVU, Burton Belcar Community Radio. We'll be right back.
You already know what it is.
This is Artemis Carter with Youth Opportunities Unlimited.
What up? Hi, this is Brian Webster, the MyCom Regional Coordinator for Burton Belcar Development. What up?
Hey, this is Camille Hurd of Fellow, for everyone's love of hair and beauty, the first and only social marketplace for all of your beauty needs.
What up?
This is Ben Golston
and Fred Ward.
What up?
Hi, this is Kimberly F. Brown.
What up?
Hi, this is Wanda Harris from Warrensville Heights, Ohio.
What up?
Hi, this is Ken Hawkins Jr. Keep it locked.
What up?
Hi, I'm Lindsay Sims.
What up?
Hey, this is Keisha Allen from Home Repair Resource Center.
Because you're checking out the hottest radio station, period.
Anything that you need, we got to hear at WOVU 95.9 FM. I am your music director, DJ Chris Towles. And thank you for listening to WOVU 95.9 FM.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest is artist R.A. Washington, who has told us that he spent some time in Texas, and then in the middle of the night, his mother scooped him and some siblings up, and they eventually ended up in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. We were just having a conversation about a group that he was involved with en route to Guide to Culture, which is a publishing entity that he created. But I just needed to get back to those folks in Black Poetic, because you mentioned some heavyweights, you being amongst them, specifically Anthony the Boogeyman Rucker, and you mentioned Daniel Gray Kantar. You didn't mention Mary Weems, but I know she's a part of that whole scene, and a few others. Let's talk about Black Poetic and the role that it played in taking you to the next level.
Well, I don't want you to say it like that necessarily. I didn't get a chance to mention all the people. There's a lot of people, but
okay.
Ebony Edwards and Kwanzaa Brewer and Q Nice. Mary Weems was a big inspiration. She actually took me on my first opportunity to read poems at a college out of town. And she took Sage and I think Daniel and Ebony and I to read with her at I want to say the Columbia College in Missouri, or University of Missouri, Columbia. I think that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Where Clenora Hudson Weems taught, the famous woman who came up with Africana womanism as a response to white feminism. So she had Africana womanism, if you remember that. And yeah, I mean, you know, I got to see the country with those cats, and you know, they're real informative as far as like everything I'm up to now, really. And it was such a meaningful time. You know, I was like 19 when I met those cats. So definitely my brothers and sisters in arms. And, you know, they were really open to experimenting and trying to, like, try new things. So they never told me I couldn't or shouldn't try something. So they'd also tell you when you failed. But, you know, they were very encouraging people. It was a good time.
Yes. And each of them is really profound in their own respective ways. I know Sage the Wise Cat, the last encounter that I had with him, he was actually working on a PhD dissertation. I'm assuming that by now he is doctor.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was doctor 30 years ago, but now it's official.
Okay. And then, of course, Dr. Mary E. Weems, you know, need we say more about her? I mean, she's just prolific as a playwright, and she's inspired me in so many ways as she has you. Daniel Gray Kantar went on to establish 12 Literary Arts. Ebony Edwards, just a phenomenal person and a phenomenal performer. I know she did a production at Larchmere Arts, actually, that Mary did. It was a one-woman show, but even in that, Ebony had a role in that, and she's gone on to do some great things. So yes, and then Anthony Rucker. You mentioned the fact that he was involved as a counselor. I was privileged to do an interview with him last year, and I found out that he's a clinical psychologist, and I think he's also working on a PhD right now. So great things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the whole crew they're all super talented. Q Nice is like an amazing DJ and artist out in LA, and Kwanzaa Brewer has been a staple educator for the past 20 years for Cleveland Public. And everybody is, black people, we tend to be, stars. So they're all stars in their lives, and real special.
Yeah, and among other things, Kwanzaa Brewer is the president of the National Association of Black Storytellers.
That I didn't know. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is awesome. So, Guide to Culture. Tell us about the genesis of that and how that rolled out for you.
The genesis of it is, we wanted to make a bookstore in a public space, and living on the west side at the time, and we got to it. We wanted it to be a co-op. We wanted it to have a printing press, and we did books of prisoners out of there, and we hosted performances and lectures and you name it. And it had a really cool run for 6 or 7 years. And oftentimes there's no one to really fill the void of leadership to keep something growing. So unfortunately, it had to go away,
Yes.
I think the culture, especially in Cleveland, we kind of love Jesus people. We love a singular person. And there's really only a couple of archetypes for black men, and both of them are false archetypes. There's the pious, upstanding person in the community, and then there's the demigod thug. And black is a spectrum, and there's a multi I would say definition for us. And you try and fit yourself in these roles that really don't fit you. So I've come to know that personally for me, and it took a tremendous amount of professional angst and personal shame and shaming by community, and off of mistakes that I was making, not really knowing any better, and definitely not being aware of my role and upholding certain patriarchal archetypes that kill black men. So, Guide to Culture is it's gone. And it's unfortunate because the work that we were trying to do and the things that we were committed to doing still should exist in some form. Unfortunately, I like the place of leadership and savior complex type vibes that Cleveland gives off. It fell for the okie doke. And now the work's not being done by the same people that said they believed in the work. So that's what happened. That's as transparent as I can get without coming through the phone at you.
Yes. Well, I can tell you, being one who is navigating this whole artist scene in Cleveland, and I know you've been involved in it for a long time, it's more than a notion. It's very difficult to organize artists. It's very difficult sometimes to facilitate collaboration amongst others. And, one of the main reasons for this is just the different silos that we exist in. And I hate to say this, but sometimes it just seems like there's this whole crabs in a barrel mentality, and nobody wants to see anyone else succeed. So it makes it difficult. We've been involved in an effort to, educate the public about the role of artists in our community. And it just requires so much work for folks to understand and for folks to work together to move the needle. Artists are just so essential when it comes to our survival in this country, and we don't really get the respect that we deserve as being creators and as being implementers. So for you to have gone through what you went through with that space, you know, and to see it go by the wayside because of some things that were probably miscommunication or trivial things, you know, but it is what it is. And, you know, during the time that it was there, I'm sure some very meaningful things did occur.
Of course.
Yes.
But I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that even. I try not to blame the people for how they're trying to survive capitalism. But the bottom line is that there's no resources. And whether you're a clerk at Walmart or you write poems for a living, there's no living wage. And we're made to feel like, well, here's some cultural currency or some notoriety and that'll pay your rent. And the fact of the matter is that it's a crime for you to even like operate in a culture like that. And it's criminal the way that capitalism is set up. So instead of, you know, and I often did this in my life where I would blame others for the system that we were trying to navigate. And now I just have my eyes pointed to the system. You know, the system makes you think that you're owed something, and in reality, we're all owed a chance at a fair life, an equitable wage. Everyone should be paid for their labor. And sometimes they try and like tell you, well, we'll pay you an exposure, or we'll pay you some of this cultural currency, and it doesn't spend at the grocery store, and it won't pay any light bill. And you know, I fell victim to not having the resources to take care of myself while I was doing this very important endeavor with a group of people. And so I used money that wasn't mine to use. And in exchange, they publicly shamed me. They called me out about it. And then I lost all my work. Everything that I built for myself to pay bills, to get bookings and teaching opportunities was gone in a blink of an eye because I misused those funds. And I was wrong to misuse those funds. But no one's talking about the fact that we weren't being paid for 6 years. And no one definitely brought up the fact that, you know, as far as my personal finances go, I'm the one that's the personal guarantor for that endeavor. So I owe all the money for the endeavor. And everybody else just walk away.
Yes.
So now when I walk around the city that I live in, I see remnants of efforts that I put out. And I'm thankful for that time because it taught me that this is really not about me. This is about how we're going to navigate this capital. And there's a lot of things to learn from the way they position us against each other. And I just try and keep myself out of the fray now.
Yes. Well, I can attest to the fact that there has definitely been some progress made, and there are situations that have enabled you to move forward and continue operating and functioning as an artist. And we're going to talk about some of those other dimensions when we return. You're listening to Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM WOVU. My guest is artist R.A. Washington. We'll be right back.
WOVU listeners, did you know you can call us during any live show? Did you know you can ask questions or give your comments live on the air? If you didn't know, now you know. Call the WOVU request line at 216-271-0959. Your voice is our request. No one says it like you. You're better than the rest. Call us 216-271-0959. Questions, comments, complaints. We want all that and the kitchen sink. This is WOVU. Our voices united. We can't do it without you. Call on through.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson. I'm having a great conversation with artist R.A. Washington. We've been talking about an establishment that he created some years back called Guide to Culture. It was over on the west side in the Detroit Shoreway area. It was an interesting space, to say the least. I remember one time we were supposed to have an event and nobody showed up. That was a real eye-opening experience for me. You just reminded me of that a few moments ago. But life goes on, and as we have this conversation, we're having the evidence, or living the evidence, that life goes on. So recently, you have been making rounds in a group of musicians. Tell us about this group and what you guys are doing.
Oh yeah. The group is called Mourning, a Blkstar. And we've been making music together since 2016. And we just put our 8th album in the can. It's called Ancient Future. And we're looking to share that with the people. And, we travel all around and play the songs. I don't know what more I can say about it. I mean, well, I do know what more I can say about it. It's probably the best thing that I've ever been a part of, and it's definitely the most fun that I've ever had as an artist. And I feel like, the best thing about it is that it's a collective of 8 people from different backgrounds and different walks of life, and coming together and creating, and you can feel the different backgrounds speaking and informing the music in all these ways. We write in a very collaboratory method, and the method is very connected to, ecstatic music and free jazz movements. The only difference is that we just remember what we did the first time we got the Holy Ghost. So it's been fun. I don't know if you've seen us.
I haven't seen you yet, and I've wanted to, and I plan to. So when you guys are doing something in Cleveland, I'm going to make it a point. The thing that has me intrigued is the name of the project being Ancient Future. I just happen to be very connected to a brother by the name of Wayne Chandler, who wrote a book called Ancient Future. So I know there's probably a relationship between the title of that book and the concept for the album. And if you would, can you elaborate on that if it is?
Well, that Wayne Chandler book happens to be Francois PCBC Open Congo, a.k.a. Gorks, a.k.a. Dwayne PJ's, one of his favorite books. And that Wayne Chandler book, he had it in his book bag pretty much from the time I met him to the time of his unfortunate death. And so Ancient Future was a way to give a nod to the start of the band and like some of the inspirations to us wanting to do Mourning a Blkstar in the first place, but also to close off that chapter and kind of give an opportunity to the meta text of the word ancient and the word future, and how there's things from the past that are informing us as we look to the future, as we build in the future, and that language and that connection should always be present, and is always going to be present, especially for Black people. So just a way to nod over there without having to lay it all out and let people's imaginations give it to them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Plus the methodology of the songs, the way that we construct the songs, you know, we'll hide something modern in old style, like one of our songs called Blackwater, which is like in an old, like New Orleans style celebratory bop, but we're calling for reparations, which is a future concern. It's a present and future concern. So the juxtaposition of the two words kind of lends itself to what we were up to the last couple of years.
Okay. And what about the inspiration for the title of the group?
The title of the group is, you know, what we came up with. James Long's, I was sitting with him and we were listening back to the rough demos of the first record. And we had just come out of the studio. We didn't even have a group yet. And we were listening to it and we were like, yo, this could be a band. And I was like, what would you call it? And we were bandying about names. And we had just been talking about David Bowie's last record, Blkstar. And it was a couple of weeks after Francois was murdered. And he's like, well, you're in Mourning. And he's a Blkstar, so let's do something like that. And, you know, he basically came up with it right there and then drew the logo. And I loved it. So I went and tattooed it to my hand before we even played the show.
Wow. That's interesting. That really puts it into context for me, because I do remember Dwayne fondly. You know, you guys used to do those sessions down on West 6th Street in the Humidor. And I just remember, you know, that whole idea of the band Black Psychologist, and it was him, Gork, the band psychologist. That's something that will stick with me for the rest of life. So to know that that his life was the inspiration for the group that you perform in now is really enlightening to me. Who are some of the other folks that are participating in this project with you?
James Longs, Latoya Kent, Kyle Kidd, Dante Foley, Theresa May, William Washington, and Pete Saudik.
Okay. That's quite an eclectic group you got there, brother.
Yeah. I feel pretty fortunate that they came around and wanted to play music.
Mm-hmm. And musically, what are you doing within the group?
What do you mean?
Well, I remember back in the day you played trumpet, if my memory serves me correctly. So is that what you're doing, or are you vocals, or what are you? How do you contribute to the project?
Oh, I definitely don't play trumpet in Mourning the Blkstar, but I play a little bass. I play the drum machines and samplers, and I help write the lyrics. You know, we're all in it together. So, but that's what I'm contributing. If you see me on stage, I got a bass, I got some samplers. Every once in a while, I get to sing. It's cool.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing this, bro. I didn't know you had that in you, but you know, you never know. You can't look at a person and tell what's in there just by looking at the outside. You know, we're so complicated and complex that there's so much more beneath the surface than one could surmise just with a cursory glance, so to speak. Can you talk about some of the things that you all as a group have accomplished? I know I've seen you in the newspapers and on television, so you're definitely making a mark. What kinds of things have you guys done in the past, and what are you looking at towards the future?
Let me put my publicist hat on real quick. Well, we are the 2021 recipients of the Emerging Artist Prize for the Cleveland Arts Prize. So that was the last thing that we got. That was a pretty significant shine, and we've gotten critical acclaim for all our records, including the cover of the Wire magazine. And, upcoming, we're going to get to be the backing band for the beautiful and mysterious Lonnie Holly, who is a painter and sculptor, musician, and griot, and all-around magic man. And we're going to be overseas with him in November, and we're just plugging along.
Yeah, that is absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I think I'm recalling that you all did something, it was either last year or the year before, and somehow it was connected with 12 Literary Arts. I could be grabbing at straws right now, but it seems as though there was some type of connection. Do you guys work with Daniel at all?
No, not officially, but of course, like we love 12 Literary Arts. And, you know, Brother Daniel is our friend. But we haven't done anything officially with 12.
Okay. So I know that you're heavily involved in the music, but you also mentioned earlier in our conversation being a poet. Are there any things that you are attached to right now that involve your writing?
No.
Okay.
No, not really. You know, sometimes people tap me to do book reviews and write essays and stuff. And, you know, I have a bunch of novels that are out in the world and different books, but I'm not really working on anything literary-wise right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, could you talk about some of the things that you have written? Because I know, you know, at a time you were really prolific. I mean, you were putting out books, and I think I have a couple of them. Reflect on your trajectory as a writer.
I mean, that's a hard thing to talk about, I think, because it's still evolving for me personally. But I've written 36 books so far, and the bulk of them are novels and memoir style writings or micro essays collected together. And you know, I was very much interested in, with each book, you know, working on an artistic problem, whether it was like wanting to play with the fact that men can't write female presenting main characters, or maybe I wanted to tell a story within a story, or whatever kind of like intellectual problem I was trying to grapple with for myself. Just playing little games with myself and trying to get better each book. And I think I was able to do that. I definitely feel like the books are different and that I did improve. And, you know, that's all you really want as an artist, is to, you know, love the process and hope that you get better as you go, and, you know, inform some of the things that you're concerned with your own performance or your own creations. and let the people decide from there.
Yes.
On whether you accomplish it or not.
36 books, man. That's quite a body of work. It just seems kind of interesting that after such, I don't know, such profound and such deep work that you would step away from it.
I don't feel like I stepped away. I just, I really want to understand why I wrote that many books. I want to understand what was motivating me to do that. And so I'm giving myself the space to kind of know why I was doing it and what I want to do in the future and what I was looking to try and accomplish. You know, a lot of people, you know, you're someone who I know very well. You didn't even know that.
Yes.
You know, there are people in my family that know that I'm a writer. You know, anytime I've been arrested, no one was like, "Hey, it's the author, R.A. Washington." So, at the end of the day, you know, what kind of external gratification or external validation did I need with all this activity? Was I trying to get love from someone, or some people, or from people? So I just really want to tease apart some of that, and so I'm giving myself the space to do that.
Okay. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about the future for R.A. Washington. You're listening to Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM, WOVU, Burton Blkstar Community Radio.
She's having fun. She says you don't want to be like me. Don't want to see.
Yeah, no offense, but what were we just listening to?
Oh, just something my previous writer wanted to hear. Want something else?
Yeah, actually, for sure. Can you switch that station to 95.9 FM, please?
Yeah, for sure. What kind of station is this?
What? You're not hip to 95.9 FM, BBC Community Radio? They have so many good shows. Whether it's a talk show, music show, it's so much good information on this station.
Yeah, I'll have to keep the dial right here then, since I drive so many different walks of life every day.
I literally listen every day and find out something new. Whether it's something for myself, my community, or just something special that's going on in the city.
Yeah, thanks. I'll keep it locked right here on WOVU 95.9 FM.
Good, because I'm sure you and all your other writers would love this station just as much as I do.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest is artist R.A. Washington, and we've covered quite a bit of ground in the past few moments, from his roots in Texas to his emergence on the scene in Cleveland, Ohio. He's been a part of groups such as Black Poetic Society. We talked about his connection with a group called Mourning, a Blkstar, which was inspired partly by an album by David Bowie, but partly by a person who was tragically killed in an incident a few years back. I'm remembering an event that happened at Mayhall's, and I don't remember what year it was. I just remember the event. And I remember there was someone there who painted a picture of Dwayne. We knew him as the band Psychologist. We knew him from the work that he did as a poet and all those great gatherings that we had. You all have also talked about taking a pause from writing, it being a work in progress, and you mentioned that you have published 36 books, which is, it's just a phenomenal accomplishment for anyone who is a writer. You know, some folks like me, we only have one book and aspire to have others. I got a few more titles and a few more poems that I'd like to publish, as well as some other things. When you look towards the future, thinking about all the things that you've been able to accomplish and what you're working on now, what's your vision for the future of R.A. Washington?
I want to get to a place where I'm proud of the person I am and the stuff I make.
That's simple.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. When you look back, what would you say you're most proud of?
I'm proud of the fact that I kept trying. That no matter what, I tried and made and tried to push. And I'm proud of my collaborations, and I'm very proud of the collective Mourning the Blkstar and what we've been able to do so far. And I'm proud of the way that I didn't duck my responsibility and my part in the demise of God and culture. I'm proud of that. Like, I didn't duck and hide. I took it on the chin, and I'm proud of the way that I responded. And so I'm just trying to build in places where maybe my upbringing didn't really allow for me to at the time. I'm trying to rebuild my tattered spine, so to speak.
Yes. From your perspective, what do you think are the most significant issues that we face as artists in this Cleveland community, this Cuyahoga County community?
Well, I think it's a question of if everyone is singing for their supper, who's cooking the food? And what I mean by that is that it's so bereft of true living wage opportunities that it's become very divisive, and it's starting to break apart, and things are starting to be more collaborative, and you can see it happening. But especially within the Black community, us being able to get access to institutional resources and being able to remake the institutions that benefit from us and really truly engaging at the table and having a seat at the table. It's starting to happen, but we can work on it more. And I feel like if you're consistently good, sometimes we tend to be like, oh, well, that's just Vince. He's solid. And we don't really give a time to give flowers. So, there's so many people in Cleveland in Cleveland's history that passed away before they even got their flowers. We wait till they're 93, like Russell Atkins, to give them their flowers. And we need to really build a culture of celebration in Cleveland and beyond. But specifically in our own city, we need to learn how to celebrate each other in true, meaningful ways. And we need to build infrastructure that will allow for people to expand marketplaces for the things that they create.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, brother. I mean, there's no question that there are some definite inequities when it comes to resources for artists in our community. And I think part of the reason is because, the artists aren't sitting at the table when the decisions are being made about those resources. And then when they do, what they get is kind of an afterthought. So artists get the crumbs that are left over, when the majors make the decisions about channeling the resources in ways that edify them and not the community at large. So absolutely. And I also agree that, many times, folks don't get their shine until they're dead and gone, which is really unfortunate because as artists, this is just my personal sentiment, but as artists, we are underappreciated for the work that we do, and the work that we do is extremely significant. So, the evidence of the worth of artists, you just go back to what you mentioned about Black Poetic Society, and the way so many of the folks who were involved in that group went on to such bigger and better things. You look at that trajectory, it's just so important. Have you had any, success navigating the whole nonprofit artistic funding paradigm here in Cleveland?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I don't want to know how to navigate it, actually.
Okay.
I feel like it should be abolished. And frankly, this is what I think happens. And this might be an inflammatory statement, but I don't actually care. We have mid-level executive jobs in all these nonprofits. So when you graduate school, your first instance of nonprofit work, you get the first 2 jobs. Those mid-manager jobs. But there's no place for the mid-managers to go after that except to an executive director job, right? People end up being entrenched in these jobs, and they build their families off of the job, and they never let them go. So we never get new blood into the jobs, and we don't have a training ground for those lower positions at nonprofits, because a guy's been there or a woman's been there for like 20 years. And all her kids went to Kent State. She had the same job at the same nonprofit for 29 years, and she retires with the same job.
Sounds like life happening as we speak, my brother.
Yeah. So I just feel like until we figure that out, we're going to always have a brain drain, and people are going to always feel like they have to start their own thing, and then where they're going to get funding from. We have to figure out a way to get people to transition to new jobs. It's not like they don't deserve a job, but where do they go next? And if you can't get an entry-level job, how do you expect to get an executive director job if you want to work in nonprofit? So you got these kids graduating school, and there's no entry-level job because there's a 59-year-old person with a program associate job at a museum, and they've been there 20 years. So, they have to leave.
Yes.
Or make some room for themselves. And then who's going to fund it? So, I think that all industries are kind of like starting to feel the strain of this experiment that humanity has created called capitalism. And the coffers are filled at the top, and we're getting squeezed in the middle, and we're getting killed at the bottom. And sooner or later, it's all going to crumble. And it's probably going to crumble with the extinction of the earth, because they don't seem to understand how dire it is when it comes to climate change and how all this is connected. Everything's a circle. So you can't just keep on pillaging the land, keeping all the profits for yourself, starving out everyone else, and expect the earth not to revolt. The earth is revolting as we speak.
Yes.
And so something's going to happen quite soon.
Well,
and as a spiteful person, I hope it happens in my lifetime. I would love to see it.
Yes. Well, I can assure the folks who are listening to this program right now that if the group that you're in and the message that you have to bring has any role in illuminating the masses on what's going on, it will happen and it will happen partly because of you. R.A. Washington, I want to thank you so much for joining me on Open Door. I look forward to seeing that performance when you guys do something in Cleveland, and I look forward to sharing your story with the world. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Vince. Appreciate it.
All right. And to those of you who are listening, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your absolute best day. Peace.